Welcome back to another update on Michael's Mark III. Hey everybody, welcome back to the IE427 garage. Today we are going to be everywhere. We're going to be jumping all around on different things for Michael's Mark III build. There are just so many loose ends. We're working on the dash. We're going to be cutting out the holes in the dash since Michael bought a blank dash from Factory 5. We've got new powder coated pieces going on the engine. We have more wiring. There's just a little bit of wiring here and there that we're going to catch you guys all up on. And who knows what else. So stay tuned. All right, I'm going to start here with the dash. I think we gave you guys a quick layout of the dash gauges and where we were going to put those in another video. But I figure I'd go over them really quick before I start center punching these and putting the pilot holes in them. We have a universal glove box that I believe Michael got from Finish Line. We have a set of beautiful Speed Hut gauges. He got some white face gauges, and I think they have some blue and black lettering with red dials. So they're really nice, and they've got a Cobra emblem in the center of them. So they're really nice gauges. So what we've done here is we have laid out with the combination square and the template we used from our Factory 5 competition gauge. We've used both of those to make sure that we're getting everything square, level, and plumb. And I've made all of the marks that we're going to need to center punch these and drill the pilot holes so that we can go ahead and grab our hole saw kit and then make all of the holes for the tack, the speedo, the fuel level gauge, the oil pressure gauge, and all that fun stuff, including the indicator lights. Now, I haven't committed to where the ignition switch is going to go. I'd like to put the ignition switch underneath on one of the under dash panels, and I'd like to also put the switch for the heater, the rotary switch for the heater, underneath the dash. But we'll see how this goes. I still don't have the fabric to cover this, so all of that is kind of fluid right now. So as you can see, what I've done is I've actually taken hole saws as my templates for what size I'm going to need the radiuses on the corner of the glove box, and then drawn around them, and then found center by just taking a tape measure, measuring across them, and splitting the difference in the center. This corner is going to work out really good because I've got two marks that are center, and the overlap on them isn't too bad. Over on this side, however, even if I cut the smaller hole first, I'm going to be right at the edge of my first hole for the pilot hole on my second. Now I'm using a drill press, and that's going to help because I can clamp the piece down, and I really don't need a center punched hole as long as the hole saw doesn't decide to catch and throw the piece off center, and then it'll make a mess. But I've done this enough times. We shouldn't have too much of a problem. We'll get it clamped in the drill press really tight. Hopefully we won't have any problems. So that's where we are on the actual dash. I'm going to take you over to the engine. I have stripped the engine down to, I guess, the bare essentials. We talked to Holly, and the Terminator X, although it has an output or an input for the knock sensors, they don't sell a universal pigtail to attach the knock sensor input signals from the dual overhead cam motor into the Holly Terminator. They said it's not needed. We're not going to put them in. So I did clean up the valley. I vacuumed everything out of here. I've got the gaskets installed. We have the new intake manifold all freshly powder coated. I'll take you into the other room and show you that. The valve covers, these are the old valve covers. I pulled out all the hardware for these, and I've got them ready to come off. I'm just keeping them on for the short term so that stuff doesn't get dropped down into the heads. And same thing over here. I have been covering the motor up when I'm not working on it, so nothing gets dropped into the intake ports as well. So there's that. We have a bunch of powder-coated parts over on the back of the F350 workbench. Don't pay too much attention to the drive shaft. I just painted that since it was out. But we took, of course, the door hinges. These were rusted. We pulled them off. We took those in. We had those powder coated. So I've got both sides, and I've got to assemble those. We got the trunk and the actually, they're not the trunk hinges on this one. We're using the old style, the Lucas style trunk hinges on this, but I do have the hood hinges. They're wrapped up in here. They need to be assembled. We got the louvers ceramic coated, and I'll tell you why in a second. But these are ceramic coated, a bright silver metallic, almost a chrome like finish. The reason we did that is because we had the existing side pipes ceramic coated in the same color. So there's kind of a theme going on here. We figured if we were going to do silver on some of the parts in ceramic, we would just ceramic coat the rest of the parts that were going silver. So the side pipes got the bright silver metallic, the louvers did, and then the intake manifold did, and I'll show you that in a second. We got some parts polished. So these are the valve cover coil covers, and they have been polished. And Michael's got these roll bar, I think they're flag holders or something. These clamp onto the roll bars, and so they've been polished as well. These are the stock coil covers, and those have been powder coated a blue metallic. We're not going to be using these since we've got the polished ones. And then we have the valve covers right here that are that same blue metallic. These are really beautiful. I haven't pulled them out of the package simply because I don't want to scratch them, but they are done and they are beautiful. Last night in the shop, I did a little bit of work on the stock fuel rail because we wanted to get the Holley sensor for the fuel pressure installed. And so what I did is I took the existing Ford pressure sensor out. It just goes in with 2 screws. You can see on the bracket there are the 2 screw holes. And then it seals with a O-ring, actually double O-rings. I drilled that out to 7/16, I believe. And then I tapped that for 1/4" NPT threads. So that adapter is 1/4" NPT, and then that adapter reduces down to 1/8" NPT for the Holley fuel transducer, which is just a sensor that's going to tell us what the pressure is. So that's in and done. Pay no attention to that side pipe there. I'm going to have a welder look at that. I don't normally take you guys in this room, but this is where the intake manifold is. So the intake manifold has been ceramic coated that same bright silver metallic, and it actually came out really good. If you remember, I had to grind down a couple points on here where the old bosses were for some of the emissions sensors and stuff like that. So those were ground down. These guys did a really good job when they coated this to give some texture back to it, so they pretty much disappear. So the only tabs that are left on the intake manifold are the ones that we're going to use. I do have all of the gaskets for all that stuff, and I have cleaned up some of the hardware. Since I can't get these bolts anywhere else, these are actually for the valve covers. I went ahead and cleaned up all of these bolts so that we can reuse these. These are a specialty fastener with these large heads, and I can't see any other thing that would come close to being able to secure the valve covers down and look nice. So these were just the best alternative. We cleaned them up. They'll go back in. They'll end up looking really nice. Let me take a break here, and I will bring you guys back when I get the dash all center punched and pilot drilled. And I don't know, I may start drilling some of the holes. We'll see how it goes. A little farther forward, all the holes are cut in the dash. I did make the cutout for the glove box and did it just as I kind of outlined before, with the hole saws in the corner, and then connected the dots with the metal shear. So the big question here, and those of you that follow us on social media will see that I made a temporary piece for the top of the dash where the 3 gauges are there in the center of the car. And it's right here. Just a scrap piece with 3 holes cut in it and a center line. And that way I could put this up there, clamp it in place, and make sure that we were going to have enough clearance for the gauges, because the Holley Terminator system is right behind there. And with a heater box, you guys remember the heater, right? Right there. The glove box and everything else that we've got to jam behind this dash, and I mean that in the nicest way. Everything's tight behind there. And so it was questionable whether we were going to be able to get those gauges in the authentic spot where it would be in, you know, one of the vintage Cobras. It turned out that we got extremely lucky. The offset of the gauges, or the spaces to the right and the left of each of the gauge worked out perfect with where the Holley harness and connectors were, and we were able to put it in just basically where we needed them. I think the only adjustment we made was we moved the gauges maybe down 1/8 of an inch, and that was more for aesthetics than anything else. I just wanted a little bit more room at the top, because once the body comes, you know, the body hangs over the top of the dash about 3/4 of an inch. I just didn't want it sitting right on top of the gauges. So that's why we moved them down just that little bit. I'm working on the glove box now, and so what I had to do is I had to cut the dash, or cut the glove box into 2 pieces. So I've got the front piece, and then I've got the back piece. So what I did was I put a tape line down the middle at about 2.5 inches. The glove box is 5 inches deep, and then I made a straight line at 2.5 inches, and I cut it with a zip disc and the angle grinder, and that gave me a pretty straight line. So what we're going to do now is we are figuring out what or how much we need to cut off the back piece, because if you see, the back piece will actually slide into the front piece, but there are notches here in the bottom where the hinges go on each side, and I can't just pop rivet the back inside the front and just leave it at that. I've actually got to cut the back portion down probably a good inch so that we have enough free play in the hinges. We'll leave this gap at the top where the 2 pieces overlap, because the cam lock that actually holds the glove box shut will go up into the recess there, and it's, you know, it is what it is. We had to modify this to make a shallower glove box in order to make it fit with the heater box. All right, everybody, I managed to get the glove box all put back together. There's a little bit of dust inside of it. Basically what we did is we cut it back, as I was saying, about 1 inch. So from my index finger to my middle finger, it's about 1 inch of material that we pulled out of there. I have the piece right here, so you can see it's about 1 inch that we took out of there. And then what I did is I marked it and drilled around the outside about every 2 inches or so. It kind of varied on the top because I was dealing with this area at the top where it drops down, but for the most part the rivets are about 2 to 2.5 inches apart. And what I ran into in the corner, because of course it's not a perfect profile when you slide one piece into the other, I did have to heat up this corner with the heat gun, and I had to use backing washers on the 2 pop rivets that are in this far corner. But from the front, it actually doesn't look bad at all. It came out nicer, and it was actually easier than I first thought this was going to be. So all in all, not bad. This way Michael gets a glove box. We still maintain just the smallest little margin in between the back of the glove box and the front of the heater, and so we were able to give him both. And we're going to continue working on the dash. I can't get the fabric right now because the upholsterer is away on vacation. So as much as I'd like to get the dash started or move forward on the dash, I only like to wire these once. I don't like to wire them and then take them all apart to cover it in fabric and then put it all back together. This one's going to be a little bit different because I think we're going with a light fabric or a light vinyl on it. So I'm going to have to use kid gloves when I assemble it to not damage or stain it. The black dash is a little bit more forgiving. However, I'm still just going to do it one time. I'm hoping Michael's going to make it out here this week. We'll go over the placement for the heater switch right here and the ignition switch. I think we'll probably end up putting those in the dash. The heater switch will probably go right here next to what's going to be our speedometer, and the ignition switch will go in between the speedometer and the tachometer over there. So that's it on that. This is actually a couple days after I started the video. I did get the surge tank mounted. This is going to have to come out because we don't want it in the way when we drop the engine in. But I wanted to get all of the mounts for it kind of in and all squared away. I had to make a support brace for the back of it. See if I can give you a view from the inside of the engine compartment. So this brace actually just keeps everything firm. So it's pretty solid in there. It's not going to move anywhere. But that'll come out when we go to drop the engine in. I'm probably going to paint. I've already got a coat of POR on these front rails of the frame, but I'm going to cover these with our old favorite, the Rust-Oleum Gloss Black, and probably do that in the next day or two. It probably won't be included in this video, but the next time you see the car, it'll probably have this all painted. I just got a call from the welder and the radiator is done, so I'm looking forward to seeing that. And then it's a beautiful evening here. We got a little bit of overcast, so it's nice and cool. I did get the power steering tank installed as well. So after looking at all our options and where we could put this, the front of the engine seemed to be the best spot. So I made a couple of custom brackets, one here and one on the side, and used the mounting bosses that were already on the tank to mount it. And so that's on the engine and it's ready to go. We're going to hold off on the valve covers until we mount the engine in the car. I just don't want to scratch them. Same thing with the intake manifold. So the engine as you see it right now is the way it's going to go back into the car, with the exception of, obviously we have to put the clutch, the transmission and all that on, but we have ordered a crossover tube that's going to take coolant from this head over to this head. And so we're waiting on that piece right now. As soon as that comes in, I'll put that in. I don't want to put the engine in and try to mount that in there because the firewall of the car is only about 8 inches back from here, and trying to get in from the top, even with the body off, is going to be difficult. So I just figured it's better to wait a couple more days to get that in, and then once that's in, then we can mount up the clutch, we can mount up the transmission, and we can drop the engine back in the car, and so that'll be pretty awesome. Once the engine's back in the car, then we can jump back on some of the stuff that we've been waiting to do, like the brake master cylinder and booster, and then we can start wiring all of the Holley system in to the engine as well. We can also get the valve covers put on and the intake manifold and the throttle body and stuff like that. So we're kind of waiting on a bunch of stuff. I think probably in the next day or two, I'm going to jump on carpeting for the trunk. I picked up a couple yards of the black carpeting that we use. I've got a great upholstery supply shop out here by us, and so this is very similar to the carpet that Factory 5 provides, but it's a marine grade. So the backing actually has a rubber coating on it, and it actually makes the glue adhere a lot better. So we have less problems with this stuff coming up over time. So I've got a couple of yards of that. I think I got 4 yards. I just figured since I was there, I bought some extra. And then the one thing that we've really been having a tough time getting, and this is with the last couple of builds that I've done, is the spray glue. And so I found an entire case of spray glue today, and I don't feel a bit bad about buying the whole case, even though those were the last 12 cans, because I haven't been able to get that. They did have some of the general purpose adhesive, the spray adhesive. It just doesn't stick as well as the heavy duty stuff. So I got that. So we're going to jump on probably in the next video. I might have an update, or I may show you how we do some of the panels, especially the trunk panels, because they can be a little bit tricky because of the cuts that have to be made. I'll show you how I do those. And I think a lot of people will be able to get some really good tips from that video if we go ahead and do that. I think I will. I think that'll be a nice, maybe just a short video, one of my Tuesday videos. It's a little bit shorter, and you guys can see how we both template, cut the pieces, and install those side pieces, because they can be a little bit tricky. So I think that may be it for this video. I don't have a whole lot more to update. I'm just kind of waiting on some stuff, and without diving into the trunk carpeting, I think I'm going to probably end the video here. All right, everybody, I think that's going to do it. We did get the radiator back last night, and I've got that sitting over here on the bench. I have yet to pressure test it just to make sure that we're not going to have any leaks, but we did get the fill cap welded shut, and we got a bung put on the side for our steam port for the surge tank. So that should be going back in the car just as soon as we get the engine back in the car. And I think at this point the engine's going to go back in the car once we get the crossover tube that we need for the back of the engine. So I'm checking the mail every day, and we haven't gotten that part yet. I'm hoping in the next day or two we're going to get that, and then I'll be able to start getting the engine prepped to drop back in the chassis, because it sure would be nice to get that in there. Then we can get the brake booster and the brake master cylinder in and bleed the brakes and all that kind of stuff. So look for that in the coming videos. I think the next video that we'll be doing is going to be the trunk carpeting. And again, I'm hoping I can show some of you tips and tricks on how to cut the side panels and get the carpet put on the side. The bottom is pretty easy because they're all fairly straight cuts, but the side panels can be a little bit tricky, especially those on the Mark IVs. The ones on the Mark IIIs are a little bit smaller because it's a number of panels, not just one long panel, and you're not having to cut around all of the structure. So, anyways, do all the liking and subscribing and sharing and stuff if you can. We really appreciate that, and we'll see you guys all next time. Have a great day.